Back when I was in school, I was very bad at math. I can't even tell you how many nights I sat at the kitchen table crying over algebra homework. However, later in life, I very quickly learned something very important. If you want to grow a business in any capacity, you must know your numbers. It does not matter what you're selling, I promise you. Now I say that, but what does knowing your numbers actually mean? Honestly, it's not that complicated. What you're tracking is the activities that you are doing and how much of those activities leads to the sales that you're getting. So, as an example, if you're running an event venue currently, here's some numbers that you want to make sure that you're watching or keeping track of. How many people click or take action on your website before a tour is booked? The reason that this is important is because you want to have a good understanding of how well your website is actually doing. Is the traffic that is coming in high quality enough that it's actually ending up in booked tours? Or are you getting a ton of traffic, but the individuals who are actually looking at your website aren't the right target audience, so then you end up not receiving any tours? Particularly, this gives you a good gauge on if you're doing advertising, particularly paid advertising. You have a better understanding of whether or not those dollars that you're spending are worth it. If you're finding that you have a lot of traffic that you're paying for and it's not turning into tours, you really need to reevaluate that piece of your advertising and improve either your website so that you're getting better conversions, or maybe your ads are targeting the wrong individuals. So they're going to your website and finding that it's not actually what they're looking for. Another number that's important to track is how many individuals are actually showing up once they book the tour. Are you getting ghosted often? Are people canceling on you last minute? If the percentage of individuals are canceling before they actually show up to the tour, or they're just ghosting you, this should show you that you're probably not doing enough confirmation or follow-up in order to get those individuals to actually show up for the event. You also want to ensure that you're tracking how many tours you're actually getting each week, because if you aren't touring individuals, then you're not going to have the amount of events that you want to have at the end of the year. Tracking the number of tours that you're getting each week also is the key number for a very important metric, which is how many of those tours do you end up booking after you tour them. Understanding how many tours actually turn into real bookings is how you have a clear understanding of how well you're doing at your sales. If you're touring a lot of individuals throughout a month, but they're not actually turning into bookings, that means that something is wrong with your sales process, or you're not doing the work that you need to in order to get them to commit. Now, with all of these numbers, if you have one that is low, that doesn't necessarily need to be taken in a bad way. Never like to consider numbers as bad or good. Really, all it is an honest perspective of where you need to pivot or adjust your process. A couple other numbers that you need to consider thinking about. One that I always like to look at is how much does it cost you in order to acquire one new customer? The abbreviated version of this is your CTA. You want to have a good understanding of how much money and time that it costs you in order to acquire an actual new customer. So this is an individual who goes through the tour process, books the tour, and then you end up fulfilling that event. When you have a good understanding of your actual CTA, you can use that number and build it into your ultimate cost in order to host an event, so you actually understand your revenue and your profit. Another term to understand is your conversion rate. So all of these numbers that I talked about previously, the amount of individuals who are actually showing up for the tour, the amount of events that you're actually booking from those tours, what is that percentage of individuals who toured and then actually booked the event? When you track your conversion rate and how it may be increasing or decreasing, it gives you a clear picture on if you're improving or if you need to do things to improve. It also gives you a good idea of what types of goals you should shoot for in the first place. It's really hard to say I want to book more events if you don't completely understand where you are to begin with. So say your current conversion rate of tours to booked events is 20%. A realistic goal might be that you want to increase your conversion rate to 50%. What are the tangible steps that you can do? And you follow up with those individuals more often. Can you be more clear at the end of your tour on what the expectations are and what the next steps are? And the last term that I'll share with you is your lifetime value of a customer, or your LTV. You hear this often in business, but it does have a bit of a unique spin when it comes to venues, because often when you're working with, for instance, a couple and they're getting married, you may not necessarily see this long, extended, clear lifetime value. However, if you're tracking your customers, you can get a good idea of how much money they're actually making for your business. So the lifetime value of a customer might not just include the event booking itself. It also may include any upsells that they end up purchasing, whether or not they end up booking with you again for a different event. Again, understanding the lifetime value of one of your customers gives you a better idea of what your pricing needs to be, what your revenue will look like, how much profit you can actually expect from one client. And when you understand that, you'll also have a clear picture of how much money you have left over so that you can do things like pay a team, cover additional vendors, or just grow your business in general. Once you have a clear understanding of your numbers, I think you will be amazed at how easy it is to make small improvements that make a big impact in your business.